This is what happens when a simple game in the woods turns into a living nightmare. The film is set in 2010 and follows the life of a photographer named Victor, who at that time is enjoying a vacation with his wife, Seren, in a city in Haiti. During this moment, Seren is heavily pregnant and eagerly awaiting the birth of their first child, making the trip feel especially meaningful as it is filled with happiness and hope for the future of their small family. While walking alone, Seren is approached by a young boy who invites her to meet his mother, a woman known in the area as a spiritual healer, and driven by curiosity as well as her instinct as a mother who wants the best for her child. She decides to follow him. At that place, a ritual is performed that is believed to bring protection and blessings to the baby in her womb. And even though it sounds unusual, Sereni does not see it as something dangerous and later tells Victor about it, who also does not think much of the incident.
Blessing of protection for Angela. I met this woman. How about you?
So you actually believe in all that?
Yeah.
After that encounter, Seren returns to the hotel to rest while Victor continues his work taking photos around the city. But not long after, the calm situation suddenly turns into chaos when a powerful earthquake strikes the area. Everyone rushes to save themselves, including Seren, who tries to escape the hotel, but unfortunately the stairs she is using collapse, causing her to fall and become trapped under the rubble. Victor, upon learning what happened, immediately rushes to help her and takes her to the hospital in critical condition.
Your wife has serious injuries.
Upon arriving at the hospital, Victor is faced with a situation that is completely against him, as the doctors explain that Sereni's condition is extremely critical and they do not have enough time or means to save both her and the baby. Victor is forced to choose between saving his wife or saving the child he's not even seen yet, and in such a situation there is no right choice, because whatever he decides will leave a wound that will never truly heal. In the end, time passes, and 13 years later, it is shown that Victor now lives only with his daughter, Angela, who is the only one left from that tragic event. Angela grows up like a normal child despite the absence of her mother, and one day she asks Victor for permission to study with her friend after school, and although he hesitates at first, he eventually allows it. However, in reality, Angela does not go to study, but instead, she and her friend Catherine head into the woods and enter an abandoned bunker.
Excuse you! Pastors and saints, lions hold the pendulum, and ask the spirit, yes.
Inside that place, the two of them attempt to perform a spirit summoning ritual that they see as nothing more than a game, without truly understanding what they are doing. But for Angela, there is a deeper reason behind it, as she hopes to communicate with her deceased mother, especially since she often feels as if she can still hear her mother's voice speaking to her. Meanwhile, that same night, Victor is editing photos for a client when his laptop screen suddenly glitches for no clear reason, making him feel uneasy and prompting him to go home earlier than planned. However, when he arrives home, he realizes something is wrong because Angela has not returned, even though it is already late, and concern quickly grows as he contacts Catherine's parents to check on her. From that conversation, Victor learns that Catherine is also not where she is supposed to be. As she had earlier said, she was going to study at a friend's house, making it clear that the two girls were not actually studying as they claimed. Realizing something is off, they begin asking around to find any information about their whereabouts, until they hear that Angela and Catherine were last seen heading toward the woods, which makes the situation even more worrying, and without wasting time, they immediately contact the authorities to start a search. During the search, they find some of Angela and Catherine's belongings scattered, such as their bags and shoes, which further strengthens the suspicion that something bad has happened. And the search continues as news of their disappearance spreads across various media.
It's okay. Angela and Catherine, they depart campus after school.
Let's get your girls home safe.
Let's do that.
Fish thought he stood. The Jabberwock.
We're praying for Catherine and her friend Angela.
If she's out there, please come home.
Eventually, after 3 full days of searching, Angela and Catherine are found inside a livestock barn owned by a farmer, still alive but in a very strange condition, as both of them appear disoriented and cannot remember anything that happened during the time they were missing. After being found, Angela and Catherine are immediately taken to the hospital for further treatment, where both of them undergo a series of examinations to ensure their overall condition. At first, Victor and Catherine's parents suspect that the two girls may have been victims of kidnapping, considering they had disappeared for several days without any clear trace. But the medical results reveal something unexpected, as there are no signs of physical harm or anything suspicious on their bodies.
If at any point you feel discomfort, please let me know. Now we have to do one last portion of the exam. I'm gonna take down the buttons, okay?
Dad, if you have any questions...
Has she ever been treated with hypnosis?
No.
How are you feeling, honey? Are you in pain?
Can you tell us anything that you remember?
They're just walking.
When the doctors try to recall the last memories they still have, Angela and Catherine can only remember performing a spirit summoning ritual inside a bunker in the woods before it started raining, and they got lost while trying to find their way out. What feels strange is that both of them believe they were only in the woods for a few hours, even though in reality they had been missing for 3 days, leading the hospital to conclude that they are likely experiencing temporary amnesia. Although this explanation does not fully convince the parents, who still feel that something is not right and suspect that someone else may have been involved. After further examinations show no significant abnormalities, Angela and Catherine are eventually allowed to return home. And at first, both of them seem relatively normal like any other children, as if nothing had happened. However, this condition does not last long, as Angela's behavior gradually begins to change and becomes increasingly strange and difficult to understand, as she starts showing unusual attitudes, speaking in harsh and inappropriate language for a child, and even acting aggressively toward Victor.
Let's get you cleaned up, all right?
Sit down. And...
Not long after that, Angela suddenly experiences violent seizures, forcing Victor to take her back to the hospital, where she continues to struggle uncontrollably until the medical staff have no choice but to restrain her and administer sedatives to prevent further harm. Yet the strange events do not stop there, as her fingernails and toenails begin to fall off one by one, accompanied by scratch-like marks appearing on parts of her body, making her condition even more disturbing.
I think we're ready for the medical examiner. Someone can call him.
Around the same time, Catherine also begins to show unusual behavioral changes, and even while attending church, she suddenly acts out of control, which leads her parents to bring her back to the hospital for further examination.
It is a very special day.
Brothers and sisters in the body and the blood of Jesus Christ. No. That
Catherine.
There, they meet Victor again, and the situation starts to raise deeper concern, especially for Miranda, Catherine's mother, who is known to be deeply religious, causing her to associate everything that has happened with something supernatural. She believes that Catherine is under the influence of an evil force and assumes that this might be because Catherine was never baptized as a child, so what they did in the woods is seen as opening themselves up to something unseen entering their bodies. Meanwhile, Catherine's father, Tony, does not fully believe this at first, but as time passes and he witnesses the changes himself, he begins to consider that maybe both girls did bring something back with them from the woods. That same night, a nurse named Anne, who also happens to be Victor's neighbor, is seen checking Angela's condition, but she notices something unusual when the temperature device she is using suddenly malfunctions. Shortly after that, Angela wakes up with a completely different demeanor, as if she knows things she should not possibly know, revealing personal details about Anne's past that she's never told anyone. The next day, feeling that something is seriously wrong, Anne goes to meet Victor and gives him a religious book she studied when she was training to become a nun, because she becomes convinced that what is happening to Angela is not just a medical condition, but something beyond logic. However, Victor does not immediately believe her, as since his wife's death, he has lost his faith in religion and God, making him reluctant to accept anything supernatural. Even so, Anne continues trying to convince him by sharing her past, including a painful experience she has never told anyone about when she had to end her pregnancy due to an unexpected situation. And this is what shocks her the most, because Angela somehow knows all of it without ever being told, even knowing Anne's real identity. After hearing this, Victor begins to feel uncertain, and for the first time he starts to consider that what Anne is saying might actually be true. Driven by growing curiosity and concern, Victor finally opens the book given to him by Anne, and from it, he learns that it was written by Chris McNeil, a woman who once went through a similar experience in the past when her daughter, Reagan, was involved in an incident that defied logical explanation. In the book, Chris recounts how her daughter was once in a terrifying condition under the influence of a dark force, an event that ultimately changed her life and led her to become a writer while also helping others who faced similar situations. Believing that what Angela is experiencing closely resembles that story, Victor wastes no time in seeking out Chris and meeting her to confirm whether what is written in the book is truly real, while also asking for her help.
Of the people that I visit,
I want to talk about Reagan, about her exorcism.
During their meeting, Victor shows her a photo of Angela, revealing the words "help me" carved into his daughter's body, which immediately brings Chris back to the events from decades ago, as what Angela is experiencing feels strikingly similar to what happened to Reagan. However, Chris also reveals that after the book was published and gained widespread attention, Reagan did not like her story being shared and eventually chose to leave Chris, and to this day her whereabouts remain unknown. Despite that, Chris decides to help Victor, and they go to the hospital to see Angela's condition firsthand.
She knows who I am.
Upon arriving, Chris quickly realizes that Angela's situation is far from normal, as she believes the girl is under the influence of the same entity she once faced, a demon known as Pazuzu. Another disturbing sign appears when they find the name Regan carved into the hospital wall, as if the entity had already anticipated Chris's arrival. After that, they decide to visit Catherine at her home, where she is being cared for, and upon arrival they find the house in complete disarray, with Tony looking completely defeated by what is happening to his daughter, while Miranda appears terrified and tries to protect herself in the kitchen along with her children. In the middle of that tense situation, Chris enters Catherine's room and attempts to communicate with the entity controlling her. But instead of getting answers, she is confronted with increasingly intense disturbances, as the entity continuously brings up her past by mentioning Reagan and even claims that Catherine's soul is now burning in hell.
I know who you are, and you know who I am.
Are you Reagan?
I come here to return life to this child.
The situation escalates when the entity attacks Chris using a cross, leaving her with serious injuries to her eyes. Hearing her screams, Victor immediately rushes in and pulls Chris out of the room before things get worse, then quickly calls for an ambulance so she can receive medical attention as soon as possible, while Catherine's family remains in shock and confusion, unable to comprehend everything that has happened. As the situation grows more out of control, Anne and a young priest named Father Maddox hold a meeting with members of the church to seek a solution, where Father Maddox tries to obtain permission to perform an exorcism on Angela and Catherine, as he becomes convinced that their condition cannot be resolved through ordinary means.
Your support in approaching the bishop to sanction the exorcism. 2 of our Lord's young children be lost. There is a spirit that is present alongside of them.
This is a very dangerous situation. Dangerous for you, Father.
At the same time, Victor looks for another alternative by meeting a woman named Dr. Beehive, who, besides being a doctor, also understands traditional healing methods, and she agrees to help deal with Angela's condition. That night, Victor, Dr. Beehive, and Anne begin preparing everything needed to carry out the ritual, and Victor then picks up Angela from the hospital while asking Tony and Miranda to bring Catherine to his house so the process can take place in one location.
We want them to come through.
Man, I'm going in.
Once all preparations are complete, they only need to wait for Father Maddox to arrive to assist from a religious perspective. But the situation becomes complicated again when he arrives with the news that the church has refused to grant permission for the exorcism due to the high risk involved, especially considering the unstable condition of both girls, which could lead to something far more dangerous. Even so, Victor insists on continuing the ritual with or without official support from the church, as he feels he has no other choice. And before leaving, Father Maddox gives Anne a Bible and asks her to carry out his role in representing the religious side of the ritual.
we're almost ready. Everyone is gathering inside.
I am sorry. I cannot be a part of this. I spoke to the diocese. Girls would best be out through psychiatric.
We're doing it, with or without you, Father.
What you're doing here is dangerous. Here, hold on tight.
The ritual finally begins by combining different methods from various beliefs, where Anne starts by reciting verses from the Bible as a form of protection, while Dr. Beehive prepares her traditional methods that she believes can counter the force, including giving protective charms to everyone present to keep them safe from harmful influence. However, the initial attempt does not go as expected because instead of weakening, the entity controlling Angela begins to attack psychologically by bringing up Anne's past and targeting her emotional wounds until she starts to lose her composure.
The whore of God. Pillar of your bones.
We need to try something else, something different, something new.
After the first method fails, they switch to another approach, where Dr. Beehive sprinkles water that has been blessed with chants, which briefly causes a reaction from the entity as if it is in pain. But even that is still not enough to fully drive it out.
Vapor from inside. They're at a critical temperature. Don't touch it! Don't touch it!
As the situation grows more intense, Father Maddox finally returns to Victor's house, still torn between following the church's orders or helping them, while at the same time, the entity begins to manipulate Victor's mind by bringing back memories of the past, revealing that when he was forced to choose, he had actually chosen to save Soren, not the unborn child. But because Serena's condition could not be saved, the doctors ultimately chose to save the baby, Angela. This truth is then used by the entity to shake Victor's resolve, questioning why he is now desperately trying to save a child he once did not choose, until eventually the entity presents them all with another choice, forcing them to decide who should be saved between Angela and Catherine. Realizing that this is nothing more than manipulation, Victor and Miranda refuse to choose because they understand that any decision will only make things worse. But not long after that, Father Maddox decides to help them, despite going against the church, only for the situation to spiral completely out of control as the force they are facing proves far too powerful. And in the end, Father Maddox is unable to survive and loses his life.
I charge you, Satan, enemy of cancer. Overcame you in the garden, Lord, with his gifts and adopted you. Depart through the sign of the...
As the chaos reaches its peak, Tony, who is already overwhelmed with despair, loses control and chooses Catherine as the one who should be saved, without realizing that the choice itself is part of the entity's deception.
I choose you, Catherine! No! I choose Catherine! Angela, 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 Angela.
The moment that decision is made, Angela's condition changes drastically. Her body lifts, and she briefly shows no signs of life, while Catherine regains consciousness as if she has been saved.
Angela!
Catherine! Catherine!
However, in reality, the entity never intended to save anyone, as it only manipulates them into choosing, because whoever is chosen is the one whose soul will be taken. That is why when Tony chooses Catherine, she is the one who is truly taken, while Angela regains consciousness in Victor's arms. From this, it becomes clear that the entity has been playing with their faith and desperation, turning what seems like the right choice into an inevitable loss.
Come on, let's get over the other one. Come on, wake up, baby!
Now?
Wake up, mommy's right here, come on!
We have an emergency.
After everything is over, the authorities and medical team arrive at the scene and immediately check Angela's condition, while Tony is left devastated, overwhelmed with regret as he realizes he has fallen into the entity's manipulation.
Can you do this if you haven't breathed in?
Hey, dispatch, we've got...
As time passes, a few days later, Angela begins to return to her normal routine, but something still feels different, especially when she is at school and can only stare at Catherine's empty seat. In the final scene, Chris is still undergoing treatment in the hospital until one day someone comes to visit her, and at first she thinks it is Victor, but it turns out to be Reagan, now grown up, showing that their relationship has slowly begun to heal and the story comes to an end.